the boss image starts to crack. Rick Ross spent years convincing the world that he was not simply rich, he was untouchable. The mansions, the jewelry, the luxury cars, the private jet, the endless business speeches. Everything around him was designed to send one message: the boss had already won. But then one small moment changed the entire conversation. A watch expert looked at the greenstone Audemars Piguet on Ross's wrist and publicly questioned whether it was real. According to the expert, only 2 authentic versions had ever been produced, and neither belonged to Rick Ross. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about the watch. It was about the image. The internet reacted instantly. Old clips resurfaced. Critics compared Ross's public claims with awkward moments involving commercial flights, tour promotion, long-running feuds, and constant explanations about his wealth. Every detail became evidence in a much larger debate. Was the larger-than-life empire exactly what it appeared to be? Or had the carefully built illusion finally started showing cracks? For years, Ross had represented luxury rap at its highest level. His deep voice, confident delivery, and businessman persona made fans believe he had transformed himself from a Miami dreamer into one of hip-hop's most powerful figures. Yet by 2026, many online conversations seemed less focused on his music and more focused on what critics believed he was trying to prove. That shift did not happen overnight. It was built through decades of success, contradiction, rivalries, and controversies that never fully disappeared. To understand why Rick Ross became a target of jokes after spending years as a symbol of wealth, we have to examine every layer of the empire and every secret hiding underneath it. Before we go deeper, tell us where you are watching from. Comment 1 if you believe Rick Ross is still a real boss. Or comment 2 if you think the image is finally falling apart. And subscribe, because the next part reveals how William Roberts created one of the most powerful characters hip-hop had ever seen. Before the mansions and Maybach music, long before the estates, champagne bottles, and private aircraft, Rick Ross was William Leonard Roberts II, a young man who grew up around the Miami area. After being born in Mississippi, from an early age, he saw 2 completely different versions of America existing almost side by side. In one direction were neighborhoods affected by poverty, limited opportunity, and daily struggle. In the other were luxury cars, expensive homes, designer clothing, and people displaying wealth without apology. That contrast appears to have shaped his imagination. Ross did not want to merely escape his environment. He wanted to build something so massive that nobody could ever overlook him again. During high school, football seemed like his first possible path forward. His talent reportedly helped him earn an opportunity to attend Albany State University, but that chapter did not last. Music was calling louder. Before becoming Rick Ross, he performed under the name Teflon Don and worked with the Carol City Cartel. At that stage, he was still searching for the voice, identity, an image that could separate him from thousands of other aspiring rappers. Talent alone was not enough. Hip-hop demanded a character people could recognize immediately. Then came the name Rick Ross. Inspired by the notorious reputation of Freeway Rick Ross, the name carried danger, power, street mythology, and authority. Combined with Roberts' booming delivery and cinematic lyrics, it became the foundation of a new identity. This was not just a rapper presenting songs. This was a fictional empire being constructed in real time. The transformation was calculated and effective. Every detail mattered. The beard, the sunglasses, the calm delivery, the references to wealth, and the feeling that he was always operating at a level above everyone else. But when an artist builds a public identity that large, the distance between the character and the real person can become dangerous. At first, however, the strategy worked better than anyone could have imagined. Hustlin' creates a hip-hop empire. Everything changed when Hustlin' exploded in 2006. The record sounded less like a normal single and more like a declaration of arrival. The hook was impossible to forget. The production felt enormous, and Ross delivered every line with the confidence of a man who already believed the world belonged to him. Almost overnight, The character he had been building became believable. His debut album, Port of Miami, strengthened that momentum. The project opened at #1 on the Billboard 200 and reportedly sold around 187,000 copies during its first week. For an artist who had spent years waiting for his opportunity, the success was a dramatic breakthrough. Rick Ross was no longer trying to enter the rap industry. He had become one of its most visible new stars. The following years expanded his catalog and reputation. Albums such as Teflon Don, God Forgives, I Don't, and Mastermind helped establish the cinematic luxury sound that became his signature. Ross understood atmosphere. His music could make an ordinary listener feel as though they were entering a mansion, stepping onto a yacht, or negotiating $1 million deal. But his most important move may have happened outside his own albums. Through Maybach Music Group, Ross positioned himself as an executive and cultural leader. Artists, including Meek Mill and Whale, helped turn MMG into one of the most recognizable labels of its era. The famous Maybach music tag became a symbol before the song even started. Ross also expanded into restaurants, beverages, real estate, books, and other ventures. The public saw Wingstop franchises, massive property, branded partnerships, and motivational speeches about ownership. The rapper, who once described wealth, had become a businessman selling the idea of wealth. At his peak, Rick Ross appeared to have solved the hardest equation in entertainment. He had successful music, an influential label, recognizable branding, and businesses beyond hip-hop. His empire looked secure, yet hidden beneath that success were questions about authenticity that would eventually become impossible to ignore. The name that came with a price. The first major crack in the Rick Ross mythology was tied to the name itself. William Roberts had transformed Rick Ross into a global rap identity. But the name already belonged to a real story. Freeway Rick Ross had become known for his role in the Los Angeles drug trade before serving years in federal prison. To critics, this was not simply inspiration. They believed a real person's reputation had been turned into someone else's entertainment brand. After his release from prison, Freeway Rick Ross challenged the use of the name. In 2010, he filed a lawsuit seeking millions of dollars and arguing that the rapper had benefited from his identity. The dispute quickly became bigger than a legal disagreement. It raised an uncomfortable question. How much of Rick Ross's image had been created from another man's history? The rapper ultimately won the legal battle. The court recognized protections connected to artistic expression, allowing him to continue using the name legally. Rick Ross survived, culturally. However, the debate never fully ended. For some fans, stage names were simply part of hip-hop. Artists had always borrowed from movie, history, crime stories, and larger-than-life figures. For others, this situation felt different because the rapper's entire persona appeared connected to the power and mythology carried by that name. The controversy did not destroy his career. In fact, Ross continued becoming more successful, but the lawsuit planted a permanent seed of doubt whenever critics questioned whether his image was authentic, and the name became the first example they brought up. That is the danger of winning in court but losing control of the public conversation. A legal victory can end a case, but it cannot force audiences to stop asking questions. And soon, an even more damaging revelation would give Rick Ross's rivals the perfect weapon against him. The Officer Ricky revelation. Rick Ross built his music around the voice of a powerful street boss. Then an old photograph appeared online, showing William Roberts wearing a corrections officer uniform. The image collided directly with the mythology fans had been sold. At first, Ross challenged the authenticity of the photograph, but employment information later reported by the Smoking Gun appeared to connect him to work at the South Florida Reception Center during the 1990s. The story spread rapidly across hip-hop media. To many listeners, the problem was not simply that he had held a regular job. There was nothing shameful about legitimate employment. The problem was the contradiction between that history and the character he had presented. In the hip-hop culture of that period, credibility carried enormous weight. An artist portraying himself as a feared underworld figure could face serious backlash if the audience believed important parts of the story had been hidden. Ross eventually acknowledged that he had worked as a corrections officer, Although he described the experience as brief, by then, the damage had already been done. The nickname Officer Ricky became one of the most effective insults ever used against him. It reduced years of luxury branding and intimidating lyrics to a single phrase. Every time Ross entered a feud, his enemies had an old story ready to attack his credibility. What made the controversy especially powerful was its longevity. It did not disappear after one interview or one explanation. It returned whenever questions about authenticity resurfaced. Younger fans who had not been present when the original report appeared learned about it through meme, diss tracks, and viral clips. Ross continued selling records and building businesses, proving that the revelation was not enough to end his career. But survival is different from escaping. The story remained attached to him like a shadow, waiting for the next rival to drag it back into the spotlight. And nobody understood how to weaponize that shadow better than 50 Cent. 50 Cent turns the image into a target. The conflict between Rick Ross and 50 Cent became one of hip-hop's longest-running rivalries, because it was never limited to music. Diss records were only the beginning. Interviews, social media posts, personal jokes, financial accusations, and attacks on credibility turned the feud into a battle over public image. 50 Cent recognized the weak point in Ross's armor almost immediately. Ross presented himself as the independent boss who had built an empire through power and discipline. Therefore, the easiest way to attack him was to portray that empire as exaggerated. The corrections officer history, the stage name controversy, the mansion expenses, the business claims, and the luxury lifestyle all became material. Officer Ricky was devastating because it was simple. It did not require a long explanation. Even people who knew almost nothing about the feud could understand the insult. 50 repeatedly used humor to make Ross's image seem less intimidating. And once an audience begins laughing at a character built around power, that character becomes harder to protect. Ross fought back with his own attacks. He mocked 50's music career, business moves, personal relationships, and financial history. At different moments, both men claimed victory. Yet the feud refused to die because neither side appeared willing to surrender the final word. Years later, they were still speaking about each other. Every new interview reopened the argument. Ross might call 5-0 irrelevant or washed, while 50 would question Ross's finances, lifestyle, or need for attention. The cycle benefited both men by generating headlines, but it also created a problem for Ross. The more often he responded, the more critics asked why a man with such a massive empire remained emotionally invested in an old rivalry. A real boss, they argued, should not need to defend himself every time an opponent made a joke. That perception would become even more damaging when another former ally transformed into a public enemy. Drake goes from partner to enemy. For years, Rick Ross and Drake appeared to have one of rap's strongest creative relationships. Their collaborations carried natural chemistry, and fans viewed them as trusted allies. Ross's commanding voice complemented Drake's versatility, producing records that felt luxurious, confident, and commercially powerful. Even Drake's earlier feud with Meek Mill did not permanently destroy the relationship. Meek was one of MMG's biggest artists. Yet Ross and Drake eventually continued working together. That made their later collabs feel even more personal. The situation changed dramatically during the 2024 wave of rap conflicts involving Drake, Future, Metro Boomin, Kendrick Lamar, and other major names. Ross publicly aligned himself with the side opposing Drake. When Drake appeared to reference him on push-ups, Ross responded with Champagne Moment. The response moved beyond competitive bars. Ross attacked Drake's identity, appearance, credibility, and behavior. The message was clear: their friendship was over. And Ross wanted the public to know that he believed he understood Drake in ways ordinary listeners did not. At first, the feud generated excitement. Fans analyzed every line and searched old interviews for signs that tension had existed beneath the surface. But as the larger Drake battle shifted toward Kendrick Lamar, Ross continued bringing Drake into interviews, live streams, and social media clips. That repetition slowly changed the reaction. Some listeners believed Ross was simply refusing to let Drake rewrite the story. Others felt he was keeping the rivalry alive, because mentioning Drake guaranteed attention. The more Ross criticized his former collaborator's music and image, the more critics questioned whether the conflict had become bigger than the original issue. Drake also had access to Ross's most vulnerable pressure points. References to Ricky, luxury claims, ticket sales, and public appearances could instantly revive old questions. What began as a battle between former collaborators became a referendum on Rick Ross's entire identity. This time, the audience was not only judging the diss records, they were judging which man appeared more obsessed with the other. The watch, the jet, and the power of memes. In another era, a celebrity could control an image through magazine interviews, music videos, and carefully planned public appearances. Social media destroyed that protection. Today, one awkward clip can reach millions of viewers before an artist has time to respond. Rick Ross experienced that reality repeatedly. When he was seen traveling through a commercial airport, critics immediately compared the footage with his private jet branding. There is nothing embarrassing about flying commercial, but the internet focused on the contrast. Ross explained that his aircraft was being upgraded with Starlink. Yet the explanation created another round of jokes, instead of ending the discussion. The same pattern followed the green luxury watch. Once a watch expert publicly claimed that the piece could not be authentic because the known versions belonged to other collectors. The allegation spread everywhere. Whether the full story was more complicated mattered less than the viral clip. In the online court of public opinion, speed often defeats nuance. Even normal behavior became material. Ross cutting grass on his enormous property could have been seen as practical, relaxing, or responsible. Instead, rivals framed it as proof that he was trying to avoid paying for maintenance. A man managing hundreds of acres was mocked for doing something many wealthy property owners might consider enjoyable. That is how memes damage a luxury brand. They remove context and reduce complicated situations to a punchline. The jet becomes fake wealth. The watch becomes fake jewelry. The tractor becomes financial trouble. The commercial flight becomes the empire is collapsing. None of those moments alone proved that Rick Ross was experiencing serious financial problem. But together, they created a narrative powerful enough to influence public perception. Once audiences begin expecting evidence of decline, every new detail is interpreted through that expectation. Ross was no longer controlling the story. He was reacting to a story the internet had already decided to tell. Is the empire really under pressure? Reports and online commentary about tour ticket promotions added another layer to the debate. Some posts claimed that dates connected to the Port of Miami anniversary tour were offering discounted or buy one get one tickets. Promotions are common in live entertainment and do not automatically mean an artist is failing. But because Ross had built his identity around dominance, critics treated the reports as symbolic. Drake reacted to some of the conversation online, while 50 Cent continued using financial jokes as part of their feud. Suddenly, ticket prices, commercial flights, jewelry allegations, and property expenses were being combined into one dramatic claim. The boss might be under pressure. The truth is more complicated. Rick Ross still owns a valuable catalog, maintains an internationally recognized name, has built businesses, and remains one of the most important rap figures of his generation. A viral joke cannot erase decades of achievement. At the same time, fame does not protect anyone from changing public opinion. Ross's greatest success may also have created his greatest weakness. He did not simply promise good music. He promised permanent abundance. He sold the image of a man who never struggled, never lost, never needed to explain himself, and never operated below the highest level. That standard is nearly impossible for any human being to maintain forever. Every contradiction now carries more weight because it conflicts with the mythology. A normal flight becomes a scandal. A business promotion becomes evidence of decline. A response to a rival becomes proof of insecurity. The empire may not be collapsing financially, but the image has clearly entered a more fragile stage. The final question is not whether Rick Ross has been successful. His accomplishments are undeniable. The question is whether he can allow those accomplishments to speak louder than the controversies Because after years of responding to every rival, defending every luxury claim, and trying to control every headline, the most powerful move available to the boss may be the one he has used the least. Silence. The real cost of building a legend. Rick Ross's story is not simply about whether a watch was real, whether a tour promotion looked embarrassing, or whether an old rival won another round online. It is about the pressure created when a public figure builds an identity that appears larger than ordinary life. For years, Ross turned ambition into theater. He made wealth sound like music, transformed ownership into motivation, and showed millions of listeners that success could extend far beyond the recording booth. Strategically, that branding was brilliant. It gave him a recognizable voice, separated him from other artists, and created opportunities in music, food, real estate, publishing, and partnerships. But a brand built around absolute power carries a serious risk. The audience begins treating every imperfect moment as a contradiction. Once people expect private jets, flawless jewelry, sold-out arenas, and total control, even an ordinary decision can become evidence in a public trial. The biggest lesson from Rick Ross's journey is that reputation requires more than success. It requires consistency, honesty, and emotional discipline. Controversies often grow when explanations arrive too late, or when every criticism receives a response. Silence is not always weakness. Sometimes it shows that a person understands which battles protect a legacy and which battles only provide entertainment for strangers. There is also a more human lesson. No artist should be reduced to one old job, one photograph, one feud, or one viral joke. People grow, careers evolve, and complicated lives cannot be understood through 30-second clips. At the same time, public figures must recognize that authenticity builds stronger loyalty than perfection. Admitting mistakes early can prevent critics from controlling the story later. Rick Ross has already achieved more than most artists will ever experience. His future legacy will depend less on proving that he is richer than his rivals, and more on showing that his accomplishments can survive without constant conflict. Peace does not mean surrender. Maturity does not erase competition. It simply means understanding that the strongest boss is not always the loudest person in the room. Now, the decision belongs to you. Comment 1 if you believe Rick Ross can rebuild the powerful image that made him a hip-hop icon. Or comment 2 if you believe the contradictions have permanently changed his legacy. Tell us where you are watching from, and share your honest opinion below. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with another hip-hop fan who wants the full story behind the headlines.